Okay. All right. So we are gathered here together on this the 35th day of counting upward. We're always counting, and we're in motion upward as we reach day number 49. We're in a transitionary period between two major pilgrimage holidays, Passover, and we're
I
making
can't walk over there. Somebody can't get in. They
somebody.
heard the bell. Somebody can't get
Okay.
in. They don't know the
Okay,
code.
so, yeah, okay, so,
Thank you, Laura.
thank you very much. David, welcome. Welcome. Can you hear me? Okay, let me see if he's here. Um, Michelle David Tucker. Okay. All right. Hope you can hear me, David. Unmute yourself, David, so we can you be a part of our session. Um, but we are in progress right now, and I hope to hear your voice very shortly. Yeah, so we're on day 35 of the Omer, and we are transitioning between Psalm 92 and Psalm number 145. And we'll see very shortly that as we are counting up to 49, which is a magical number, and then we have the Festival of Weeks, Shavuot, as ordained by the Torah. We are also in this Psalm 145 transitioning from a low level, as we know, as we discussed, we're full of tuma, as this past parsha talks about all of the Kahanic impurities that need to be corrected, or the various impurities that disqualify the Kohen. That's what our last parsha was all about. And so we're trying to, and in this Psalm 150, 145, excuse me, we are also working our way upward to a very high state of connection to sovereignty. I mean, the whole purpose here is for us to realize that, we're just part of a large universe, and we are just small, so we say, puppets in a universe that's controlled by a higher force. And I want to thank my parents particularly for the inspiration for this particular session, because they were the ones that created what I call the space um, uh, for the Sabbath. My parents, and very quickly, Barbara knows who they are, as well as David. David was at my home. Um, they were very engaged in the community. They Because of them, we were in 5 synagogues. So our family was Mount Vernon Jewish Family of the Year one year, because they were so active with education and fundraising, and they connected to 5 different synagogues: the Reform Synagogue, Rabbi Maccabee, and the Orthodox Synagogue, and the Reform and the Conservative Synagogue. So very connected. And they created a Sabbath for me that is something I need to share with you guys. And that is, my father was given the permission by one of the top rabbis in New York, who had a big synagogue in Lower Manhattan. Um, that was my grandfather, and he was the big posek. He was the rabbi that issued decrees that people followed, very much like Rabbi Moshe Feinstein uh, was also a posek. My grandfather was a posek, and he basically told my father, "You can work on the Sabbath. You got so many patients to take care of. You go." And so my father worked 7 days a week. The only time I had a chance to hook up with my dad was Friday night. It was a very, very symbolic time for me, because my mother, being the daughter of a rabbi and being very Sabbath conscious, created a special space that all the family would sit down around a beautiful table, um, and we had guests over, and somehow in my growing up, they sanctified these 4 hours for me to create what I called my Sabbath,
What was
because
your grandfather's name?
his name was Rabbi Moses Kalanimus Skinder. He was a
Greek?
line. He was Greek, originally Greek. They came a line of 40 generations of rabbis, and his son became a rabbi. So
That's a well-known name.
he had a synagogue in Lower Manhattan called the Sons of Calvary Synagogue, and Eddie Cantor was and
Yeah.
George Jessel were bar mitzvah there. Some of these comedians,
synagogue still there?
It's still there,
Yeah,
but
'cause I visited there. I was there. at
it's
that
still
great
there. I
synagogue.
visited it
Yeah.
about 10
Yeah.
years ago. They
Yeah.
finally had to close it down because of,
Tarnished.
obviously,
Yeah.
they didn't have enough members. The members don't gravitate. Pardon?
No,
No, this is all in
sorry.
East Broadway. This is in East
Yeah.
Broadway. Yeah, East Broadway.
We went as a whole group from the shul to down there.
Yeah, you went down to, I know which one you went to, Elridge, the Elridge,
Oh, it was
Elridge.
Lower East Side.
Lower East Side. Yeah, well, my grandfather is now a Buddhist temple. I went there and they invited me and they said, we're vegetarian. You can sit down and eat with us. Yeah, but I was very happy to see that it's still in a spiritual home.
Yeah.
But in any case, they created 4 hours for me, and that was my Sabbath basically. Because the next day, my father ran off in his Cadillac. I used to hide his keys so he couldn't go to work because I'm going to shul and he's going to work, and it just didn't make sense to me. But in any case, what made sense to me was that there was a space created in which my parents really took a very secular, mundane world that we're all living in back in the 50s and 60s, of getting things and having things, and they created a spiritual home for me, and I'm very happy to have a partner that celebrates in a very similar way to this day. So that's the reason for my harping on the Sabbath. And David Tucker, who's with me, he was one of my 5 Columbia classmates that were invited to my home for Sabbath dinner, and I felt I needed to share this very spiritual experience with some of my classmates because I didn't fully understand it, quite frankly, but my parents did, and that was all that mattered. Okay, and they created Sabbath, and that to me it's an oasis in time. It's a spiritual time where we can all get together and feel it one, and you feel it one with a higher source. And I'm very happy to welcome back Alvin and Brett Olson. These are the prominent members in our synagogue and up and coming members. They're always up and coming, and I'm very glad you're coming and joining us for that with our session here. And Aviva, welcome. Yeah. Welcome. Yeah, I'm glad you guys, you can still go down to Fifth Avenue. I know that. That's according to Bruce Newman, Dr. Bruce Newman. Okay. So where are we? To bring us up to date, we spent 2 sessions on Psalm number 92. Psalm number 92 is the Psalm of Sabbath for the Sabbath. It does start off with a line that is not a part of the Psalm, as we all know. It basically says Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat. That is added on. That's what the sages added on because they wanted you to know that this is the psalm they picked out for the Sabbath. Okay, we've been through this. It had 4 parts. It has the various parts to it that we studied. The first part is you should always give praise. I mean, always, every day, give praise. The second part was God's wonders, God's works. God is full of always creating new tangible and intangible parts of our universe. The third part is that evil always perishes. And the fourth part of this famous psalm is that the righteous will always survive. The righteous will survive. So what does it mean to be righteous? That's one of the answers that we have to ask today, answer today. And we need to answer, why in this universe does evil prosper? I mean, it's a question that we cannot answer fully, but that is one of the major questions that's posed by the Psalm 145, which is chanted 3 times a day. It's the most important psalm in the liturgy, and everybody should be on page 150 of your prayer book here, and we'll go around the table and discuss it. Okay. Any questions that you guys have? Feel free. This is a round table, an imaginary round table where everybody is equal, and everybody can raise your hand, and we'll do the best we can. We'll get as far as we can today in Psalm 92. I prepared a very, very detailed elucidation, if you will, elucidation that will take us to a higher level. And that's the whole purpose, is to get you guys to realize that poetry the whole Torah is poetry, and this is beautiful poetry. David was the major poet, and he woke up at midnight with his lyre, making beautiful melodies, and he composed his psalms in the middle of the night, and he studied Torah in the middle of the night, and he's the ultimate psalmist, if you will, with a 10-stringed harp. That's very important. He had 10 strings in his harp. Okay. Now, as you remember, this Psalm 92 began with a line that was a hakdama, an introduction. And so this psalm that we're doing today, Psalm number 145, is a hakdama as well. There is a hakdama in it. And Moshe, why don't you start on it with the first, you're on page 150. Okay. And we'll talk. Let me see if I get up for Dave. I gave Dave. Dave, can you hear me? I know you're there. Okay, you're there. Now I don't see you or hear you. Okay. Share screen. Let's see if I can share screen numbers. Okay, so Moshe, why don't you begin with this one over here. This line is the introduction. So let's talk about that first. You can do it in Hebrew or in English.
Okay.
And that's anybody who I call on can do it in Hebrew or in English or both, whatever you feel comfortable with, okay?
אשרי יושבי ביתך עוד יהללוך סלע. אשרי העם שככה לו, אשרי העם שאדוני אלוהיו.
Okay.
תהילה לדוד.
Okay. And translated, it's
well, אשרי, praiseworthy are those who dwell in your house. May they always praise your Selah. Selah is an interesting word. It doesn't have translation. Praiseworthy is the people for whom this is so. Praiseworthy is the people whose God is Hashem.
Okay. Now, for your information, this comes from another psalm, okay? This comes from Psalm 84, verse 5, which no need to turn to, but I just throw that in. The question is, why did the rabbis append this hakdama, this introduction, as we will soon see in verse 22, which is not a part of this. There are 21 verses to this psalm. Why in verse 22 do they append another, I call it a coda, like a musical ending to a symphony. They call it a coda. So the last 22 is also an appendage. But let's start off with this. Why did the rabbis feel important to start this poem? And it is a poem that goes from Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. It's called an acrostic. Mm-hmm. And this Ashrei, even though it's an Aleph, is not part of the poem. It's an appendage. Okay. So that's the idea. Let me give you a little introduction here as to why the rabbis appended this. Okay. The idea is that we are commanded to say the Ashrei 3 times a day, twice in the morning prayer, once in the mincha in the afternoon. That's 3 times. And the idea is the rabbis say that anybody who chants the Ashrei 3 times a day will merit a beautiful exit and a beautiful life here and an exit into the life to come. And that's the idea is, how do you achieve a life of happiness here so that you feel you've accomplished something, and then you have like a prose or an entrance to another existence that we believe in. We believe in an afterlife. We believe in transmigration of souls. So why is it important that the rabbis put this there? Okay. And that's the question we have to answer. Of course, I have some hindsight. I could say because this is the most important psalm of all the psalms that we have. It's chanted on Sabbath, it's chanted on holidays, it's chanted virtually in all the prayers. But and particularly this one, they picked out because this is the most significant one. That if you follow the rule and go from Aleph to Tet, you go the 24 letters of the alphabet, you will be completing a steps, 21 steps to a higher level. I mean, that's the idea. Like we have 49 steps right now to get to Shavuot, to the Festival of Weeks, but there are 21 steps here. And so there's some mysticism here that we just need to accept because this is what's handed down to us. That's all I can say. Okay. All right. So yeah, go ahead.
Not ted, to tough.
Okay.
Tough.
Yeah, tough. Yeah,
Tough.
tough. Yeah. I'll have to tough.
The last one in
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough, not ted.
Yeah, I mean, tough,
It's
excuse me.
tough,
Yeah,
yeah.
good. Okay, so now let's go around the, pardon?
Yeah, as you were explaining.
Do you have a comment? You want to make a comment? Sure, please do. Yeah, yeah. Everybody should have a prayer book. If you don't, I'm on page 150. Okay, go ahead.
she has.
I think that the first sentences of Ashrei set a tone, but they also go from step to step. So you are saying Ashrei Yoshvei Beitecha, you are down here on earth. Right? Then you're going to, how do we connect to a God spiritually? Okay. Odi halalucha Selah. Selah, you're right. Selah doesn't have an exact English translation. Selah means with praise forever, that's the way it's gonna be.
Rabbi Roth
Sorry.
used to say that Selah was an exclamation point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so, right.
Call
but
it,
it's
it
not
calls
just
attention
an
to whatever you're saying. It
exclamation.
calls
It's an
attention.
exclamation point, but it's also, hey, this is the way we're doing it, and that's the story. You know, that's what we are going to do. So you are going from your house, your people, to your hallelujah selah, praise, and then you're going all the way up after that. You are an who accepts that, shekachalo. Okay, it's to him, and he's connecting people to a relationship with a God, because he's saying Asher ha'am shekachalo to him, and then he's saying final piece, and you go back up the ladder, Ashrei ha'am Adonai Elohim. So you're working your way up the ladder. And that's a way of, if you're going to start a prayer, bring people in and help them to, my favorite word, to get them to begin to say, we're going to forget about what's going on around us a little bit and turn inwards. We're climbing a ladder, turning inwards, saying, stay with God.
I will take this one step further mystically, okay? I didn't want to get into it, but since you introduced it, okay. Ashrei, praise we are the people that are in your temple. That's what the that are in your holy place, okay? That's the present tense. Od Yahaluka Sela means that in another tense, another temporal time, meaning in the future life, they will continue to bless you. So it's the idea of that the blessings never stop. You start here in this life, and you're in the temple, you're connected to God, and that continues to the next life. Okay.
There must be some relevance because it's at the early part of the day, the start of the day. It has to have much more, significance.
Very good. And we, as we discussed, that the best time to praise God is early in the morning, before you start your rounds of the day, and then in the evening, and when you finish your rounds, you do the evening prayers. Yes, so it's a perfect time for you to sit in God's presence, like we are right now. We're the services here begin at 7:00, and they go. We have 3 different morning services here. That's what's happening. The spiritual growth of the synagogue. We have 3 different services in the morning. Okay, 6:30, 7:30, and then 8:15. So there's a lot of sitting here and a lot of study, and the implication that while you sit, that it's a yeshiva, you study, you have books around you and you study, you're taking a life to the next level, and then you do it and you join with other people, and as an as a congregation, you're taking it to the next level. And what can be more happy than a whole group of people in harmony? It's a musical. Again, these psalms were meant to be sung by the Levites in the temple, and so these are harmonic concordances or resonances that we're establishing here, and that's the main reason that the rabbis added this particular introduction. Okay. Yeah, it's praise. You'll find the theme of constant praise to be repeated here over and over and over again in a harmony, going from alpha to omega, as we said. Okay, all right. So Brett, you're next with the Aromem, Hebrew, English, whatever, or French, whatever. Okay. Okay, now you're going to do one, and then translate from the English, you guys.
I will exalt you, my God, the King, and I will bless your name forever.
Okay, so you have see, so you're the olive guy. Okay, you're the olive. Okay? And olive, of course, represents God. God is the olive person, and Aaron Memcha Elohai Melech, that God is our king. That we acknowledge that there's really one kingship for our people. You know, we may have other dignitaries, but all the rabbis look up to what is the original intent of the verse. What does God's sovereignty mean to us? Okay. So God is a supreme force above all. He's above all the laws of nature. He can create supernatural events, as we'll talk about shortly. And the idea is that I will bless you in the hereafter, when all physical forces and objects are illusory. And then I've got comments. That's the Radak, and he's the Rabbi David Kimchi, who lived in the medieval times. I'll mention a few names out there because this is not all my elucidation. I'm borrowing from lots of rabbis studying all these line by line. So there you go. So God is one supreme God. He is above it all. He's above nature, and we have to continue worshiping him. Okay, so we're up to Aviva. You're up to the bet. Okay, bet. Yeah, you having a bet is for a bite. There you go. Bet is for bite.
From our truth.
I haven't got Alvin. You're gonna be next here. So you got to join us here. I feel bad that you're Alvin. Come on, we can make some room for Alvin. What? Come on. You don't even have a book. You're on page one. Oh, you have one. Okay, good. Okay, but you can be next. I mean, because you're next, buddy. Okay. And then Dave, my friend Dave, will be next here. Okay, go ahead. Okay, bet. Okay. And English, translate as best as you can.
Lord, your name forever.
Okay. All right. The idea here is that no one could pretend to know God's essence. We don't know. We describe him anthropomorphically. He has hands, he has legs, he has a heart. But we're all equipped to appreciate the life that we have, the health that we have, our sustenance, the sunshine, the rainfall, all the tangible aspects of God that we discussed under God's works. Psalm 92, that was the second part of Psalm 92. And we thank him. We're daily reminded to give thanks. That's the idea. Again, the general idea is you give thanks because we take it for granted. We sit at a beautiful table here. It's a solid table. We've got food. We take it for granted that we have our bones are together in the morning, that we're able to chant, we're able to sing, connect with each other, have a good breakfast, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. praise not only with constant material blessing in this world, but I'll continue. This is what the psalmist is implying to praise you in the life hereafter. Spiritual bliss and enlightenment is achieved there. In other words, there's a lot of mysticism here that the world that we're living in is just a preparation for a higher level that we will enter and will, God willing, sit with the angels and connect to God. And we're not worried about our physical needs, where it's all spiritual. It's like we have a perpetual symposium of high level spiritual thinking. Okay. All right. So we're up to Alvin. You're on verse 3. Okay. Translate. Okay, so God is great. God is greater than any human who attempts to recount his praise. Okay. And also that his essence is a mystery. I mean, the fact that we're here is a mystery. The fact that the Earth is a mystery. The fact that we're part of a Milky Way, of a constellation. This is all a mystery. We don't know it. All we can do is see the tangible aspects of God and try to use that as a way of understanding what He wants from us, and that's very important. That's coming up here because how do we find out that the life that we're living is the one we're supposed to be living? Maybe we're praying God and we're praising God for things that we shouldn't be praising. There's always a problem there. So how do you know that you're on the right path? And we'll get to that. This poem is from A to Z. Alpha Omega covers a lot of stuff. Okay. And we're up to
Richard, can I add a thought?
sure, go ahead. You have a question.
I think it's interesting that Aleph and Bet are the two stanzas that are in the first person.
Yes.
Then you mentioned Aleph is a representation of something higher than us. So the Torah starts with the letter Bet, Breshit, and not Aleph, and kind of recognizing that Aleph represents something higher, godly, spiritual, and Bet is our first opportunity to bring godliness into the world. So I just think it's interesting. Well, and so the first stanza is more of obviously a recognition of God being one and above, and then how do we bring that in is Aleph and Bet. But then the rest of Ashrei doesn't really focus as much as on I will do this. It's more kind of looking outwards into different aspects of God.
Very good. You hit on a very good point, and that is that this is very personal. The psalmist is speaking from the first person, very, very personal. But there'll be other parts where it's a general, it's like the third person. But right now it's very personal. That I will praise you, Aramimcha. And you hit a great point because the Aleph should be reserved just for God, but the Aleph Aramimcha is that I will raise you. I will get to your level. That's implied that you're way up there, and through my praise, I will somehow get to a higher level. I will get you higher, and I'll get me higher, so I can connect to you. Because God is this invisible essence. How do you connect to God? I mean, you come and you pray and you sing, and singing is one of the major reasons. Go ahead.
Generation to generation.
Yeah.
Journal.
Mm-hmm.
Start off with I, not in a global, but internalizing. Right from the start.
Yeah, I always bring this in since some of you are not here. This is what Rabbi David Walk. He's a legend, a rabbinic legend in our synagogue here for many years. He did the Torah from beginning to end. He started it, and it's legendary. But he's now living in Israel and has dozens of grandchildren and great. But in any word, the world was created for me. Okay. I, this is your ego, okay? I'm on top of the world. I'm up there. I'm successful. I got $1 million in the bank. I'm president of my company. I've got this big home in Ravona Woods, whatever. And yet, on the other side is I am dust and ash, okay? So, where does man stand here? You have the Aleph, which is the highest level God, and then you have man. Man is of dust, and he'll go back to dust. I just had the sad part of having to bury a close friend of mine. And he went from brilliance to dust. I mean, a brilliant mind.
Anybody who studied under David Walk, just to let you know, I speak to him periodically, and he is still very much in action.
Oh, yeah, he's
Yeah.
a great
And he
teacher,
writes articles and teaches and so on.
great teacher,
Yes, wonderful.
and an inspiration. So he lives beyond. I mean, he's part of the process of connecting to internalization and mindfulness. How do you get to the point where this is beautiful stuff? How do you get to the point where you can bare your soul and make it white, make it clean, so that you can be responding to, to the universe around you, that you can really appreciate nature. You can appreciate not only nature as it, but supernatural things. I mean, how do you get to that level where you are just, yourself is open, completely open? All your cares, worries, and your heartaches and pains are diminished, and you have that space. That's that's what I'm talking about. Sabbath space. How do you get that space where you can really communicate to a higher source? Okay, that's what we're trying to answer here. And are we successful? That's another question. How do we do it? Okay, so we're up to number 4. Go ahead, yeah.
I don't know, I'm somewhat of an agnostic here. But I think in between is reason you have to keep reinforcing your admiration of Hashem is that you don't really subscribe to it, so that you need to constantly reaffirm your commitment because you yourself are not totally immersed and totally committed to it. Because if you were, why would you need to constantly reaffirm it?
And I think that Helene will agree about that you need to constantly reaffirm, even if you don't feel that connection. It's the idea of Nasev and Ishma. Just by doing it, by saying it, hey, look, I'm here in the synagogue. It's a beautiful synagogue. And say the words. Just by saying the words, it's like a mantra. By saying the mantra over and over again, somehow you will make that connection. And I think that's a brilliant idea. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. That's the idea of praise, constantly praising. Wake up in the morning, praise God. Even if things go wrong, like we studied in 92, God has his reason. You may not know it in your generation, but your children, your grandchildren, they will benefit from the errors and mistakes that you made, and they will benefit from you. And
That's why we don't change the liturgy. We don't change anything. It's what each generation, for instance, here, we're saying the same prayers that my father, my grandfather, and so on and so forth said, and we stick to it. And that's why we have what we have.
we'll be coming up to that
Yeah.
idea very shortly in the Ashrei of constantly reminding the next generation what happened in the prior generation. And so how do we know that the splitting of the Red Sea happened? Because each generation passed it on to the next one and the next one, and it became a part of a lore, Lore, that we believe in. Is at the base of this psalm is the idea of bitachon, which is the idea of just total immersion and belief. You have such belief in a God, even though I can't see him, and I got to praise him all the time because that's the way I know he's there, or the force is there. And may the force be with you. So that's
The
it.
telephone effect,
But
from generation to generation, telling stories.
there you go. The idea of the Baba Misa,
And it also depends what stage in life you're at.
Yeah.
Because I may not have believed everything I was taught growing up.
Yeah.
But as years went by, I realized, I found out for myself what I was seeking. And now I adhere to every word, and I believe every word is there for a reason. Other than the fact that we just do it over and over so we remember. That's only part of it. It all depends upon where you are.
Internalizing it,
Yeah,
internalize. How do you get this energy to be in part of you, as opposed to just seeing the wonders of it? You can look up the constellation, the stars, the beautiful trees,
it doesn't
the
happen
harmony of nature.
automatically. It
Yeah.
doesn't happen. You have to be subjected to the same thing over and over, and you have to be at a certain point in life where you realize, hey, this really is the way. This makes sense.
And like, you know, the idea is to do it on a steady basis at a certain time, waking up early in the morning, as we've been talking about. And that's the perfect time for you to turn your thoughts to a higher source. Yeah.
Yeah,
And just to thank God that you wake up with your bones intact.
right.
You know, you don't have a sudden missile coming
Yeah.
right in your backyard. I mean, you know, we take all this for granted, and yeah. And that keeps us going, as our prayer keeps us going. Okay, so we're up to who's next? Over here we have all right, Susan, why don't you pick up, and then we'll come back to Stuart. Stuart should be next, but we're gonna,
Generation
okay.
to generation.
Yeah,
we should-
door to door, generation. Yeah, generation to generation. Right.
Each generation will praise your deeds, for the next of your mighty deeds they will tell.
Okay, so this is what we've been talking about, right? How do we know things happen as they were written down in our book? Because, you know, we share it. Each generation is witness to a small part of God. This is beautiful stuff. Small part of God's infinite greatness. It's like a mosaic that God has created. To gain a true conception of God's infinite greatness, one must piece together a complete historical tradition based on testimony of many generations that have witnessed God's marvelous wonders. And that's a rabbi called the Radak. The idea of putting it all together so we have a piece, and we're part of the greatness passed on to us. So that's the reason that we have to be thankful. We have to give praise to our parents, grandparents, and the scholars that have written down all these beautiful poems for us to elucidate. You know, Gudolska ein Cheker. You know, there is no human greatness is unlimited. Greatness of human knowledge. God is infinite. We must visit tradition, come to us from earlier generations. We have to respect what's given to us. Okay. All right. So up to verse number, okay, Vortra Yagidu refers to extraordinary miracles God performs. These deeds are not part of the regular course of our natural events. And of course, the obvious one is the crossing of the Red Sea, that we just, you know, it's supernatural. Supernatural. I bet the walls of Jericho coming down, a supernatural event. Okay, so up to verse number 5. So 5. Are you going to do number 5? Okay, Gloria. Yeah.
The wondrous glory of your power and your wondrous deeds I shall discuss.
Okay. Hadar Kavod, this is kind of hairy stuff, mystical. I'll try to go slow. And what's happening here? Hadar, Kavod, Hod, these are mystical terms, Kabbalistic terms. Okay. God has complete control over aspects of nature. We believe that. But his mastery is hidden from human sight. How he does this, we don't know. This private divine rule is referred to as Hod, majestic power. It's a deep mystery that includes many secret dimensions of creation. Occasionally, God grants a glimpse of his power to man. This external demonstration of God is called kavod, God's glory. Okay. And Hadar refers to his splendor. And this is from the Malbim. He was lived in the 19th century. Mayor Labish Ben Yechiel, Michel Visser. I mean, he's quoted a lot, but that's the idea that Hod is a secret that we don't know. It's a secret of his mastery of power. All we can do is see his kavod, his glory, the way he, the results of it that we see, but we don't know how it works. I mean, that's the idea here. Okay.
That's a very good concept because Anne doesn't like, human beings don't like the concept of, I don't know. They liked it, it's not a hard concept to believe, it's a hard concept to accept,
Hmm.
which is different because we want to know, keep going into the great beyond. But to ask somebody to accept the concept of code means that they have to step back from themselves and step back from the way we think in order to try a different concept and a different method of thinking. Code is have very different.
Yeah. Go ahead. I have a very interesting point. This is a good time for me to interject a very enigmatic part of Psalm 92 that we covered 2 times, and that is number 11 that we have spoken about, where David says, "My horn hast thou exalted like the horn of the wild axe. I am anointed with rich oil." Okay, that is a very mystical reference to that David was anointed king, as we know, despite his sinful acts. He was anointed, and that brought him to a very high spiritual level. Brought him up to, and David could see and feel things that no one else could feel. He was able to write about it, and he was able to see himself as being, I hate to say it, but a scion of God, a son of God. I mean, God chose him. Of course, the Christians take it so far. I don't want to take it in that direction, but he sees himself as anointed. He's up there with kingship. He's at God's level. He's with angels. I mean, and that's his poetry. And it's hard for us to connect that because we're not there. We'd like to know, like you say, but we're not there. We're not, we get glimpses of it. Okay.
With enough validation. He evidently.
We don't have validation. Yeah, no. Yeah, how do we know? Yeah, how do we, what kind of feedback do we get? How can all I can, I mean, yeah.
You read this, I keep thinking to myself, how many different transformations I have made over my course of my life. And I have different interpretations of the same line at different phases of my life.
Mm-hmm.
Almost like the artist who had a green period, a red period, a yellow period. And it's the same thing here. And that's why it's important that you reinterpret each of the prayers or the Psalms every stage of your life, because you'll have a totally different meaning to you because of that.
Get that right?
Normal human
Yeah.
evolution. Of
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Absolutely. You got to keep reading it. Yeah.
I don't know why, but it's meant to be that yesterday I read about the fact that Rabbi Akiva's 24,000 Talmudim
Yes.
were exterminated.
Yeah, they were exterminated.
Because of a lack something. And the interpretation that I read was that certainly they were intelligent and knew how to practice all the mitzvahs, etc. But they didn't treat each other properly. And what was that way? They didn't honor each other,
Enemies
and
of
they
each other.
had no
Yeah.
humility.
Yeah.
And I
Right.
think that's a shortcoming of people. We don't want to be considered less than. And we try to interpret everything, but we have to have humility to know there is another side that could also be right. That you could be right and I could be right. But we don't listen and honor the opinion.
It's a tragedy
other.
that we don't
And
address enough. You're addressing, I'm very glad that you do, and that's the reason we say the 33rd day of the count, there was a pause in this killing.
Yeah.
Don't, again, this is supernatural. But, and then right now in the parsha, we're studying all of these various sara'as, which are lesions of the skin. And that comes from people belittling other people, the lashon hara, and we're dealing with this. It's very important. Tell it like it is, and respect the other person, like Rabbi Akiva, as if he is you. Treat him as if he's your brother. And they couldn't. 24,000 is an incredible number of students that perished. And where were they living? Where were they living? In caves. They had to live in caves because the Romans were out to kill them. And so here, these people, they didn't get the fact that they were being belittled because they were Jews. And yet, even in this belittled state, they needed to still belittle other people. And that's a tragedy. It's a tragedy. But I was thinking of you guys at your stage of life, finding a spiritual connection that you didn't expect, Lloyd, 20 years ago, or even Thursday. So you're at a different spiritual level.
Not.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, these guys are recently married. Wish you got to go.
No.
Okay, all right, good.
Just-
Yeah.
And I know Lloyd from
Yeah.
way.
Right,
Yeah. He goes where?
Our daughter was our first babysitter.
Yeah. And you still tired her, you still love her, you know.
love it more,
Uh,
love it better.
Oh, yeah.
With me, it was love at first sight.
Oh, that's even better.
Now, there is another little parish here that we need to talk about, and that is that there's the word sicha. Okay, sicha in this. Sicha refers to everyday conversation, the small talk that people do without even thinking. It's kind of spontaneous talk. Okay, so the psalmist is saying here that he's making a commitment that when I talk with my fellow man, I will make the deeds of God, both natural and supernatural, the topic of my conversation. Now that's taking it to a higher level, but that, the conversation that we have here is high level. I mean, I'm glad that we all come together and we spend an hour, trying to raise ourselves to a higher level of understanding of what we should be doing. And what we're doing is what we should be doing, is trying to elucidate how it relates to us, us. We're important. That's the reason we're here.
Richard, you really hit on something so right and so truthful. How many of us do pick up Tehillim and start reading it and try to start to understand it? And what is it in my life? Unless you're saying a prayer for somebody, whatever, but just to do it outright. I mean, I say Tehillim every day for a reason. But would I ever pick it up and just start reading the Psalms? Probably not. And now that I'm so into it, even if I didn't have to say this for somebody in particular, now I think I would do it just to pick it up and say, what is David or whomever wrote this trying to say? Very important.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason that I'm doing it and focusing more on our holy book literature than
Yeah.
just world literature, which is where this course started.
Yeah.
Poe and T.S. Eliot and John Milton, Shakespeare. But we have a tremendous amount of material here to cover, and we're obviously not going to complete this poem today, but we'll get as far as we can. And then I thought that in 2 weeks from next week, I'm celebrating a major birthday and my parsha also falls on that day at my brother's synagogue. So and
Seems
I'm
to be
I'm bringing a lot of food there. We're having a family celebration. So 2 weeks from this Sunday, we could, if everybody is open, we could continue wherever we left off. But I don't want to, 2 weeks, yeah, if it works out. But I mean, I do want us to take our time, and if it takes us however many sessions, I'm prepared to do it right,
Good.
because every word here, it's like David is, he's God's right-hand man. Every word of the Torah, you said you can do it, you can write a thesis on, okay? So every word here, we can see the word sicha. I mean, it's just a
Yeah.
casual conversation. That's what we're having here, is we're having, but yet we're infusing it with a higher level of understanding so that we can relate it with our other half and our spouses and children, grandchildren. We have different ages here, and it's exciting. And yeah, I mean, I teach at Greenwich High School, so I deal with 15 to 18-year-olds, and here we deal with 30 to 90-year-olds. So I mean, it's a great spectrum, and that's where we learn. Is that, you know, it's a round table. Everybody's equal here. I mean, no one. I don't. Lord, I just happen
Chip,
to.
what's wrong with the
What,
50 to 90 group?
I mean, but I mean, there's nothing wrong with 15 to 90. You have more time to spend with your grandchildren and your great grandchildren and whatever, you know, and keep on learning. That's what it's all
It's
about.
like you're here.
Okay, so
That you.
David, are you there? Can you hear me, Dave?
Yes,
Okay, so
here.
I hope you're following the conversation here that we're
Yes,
now.
very closely. In fact, I wanted to, may I?
Sure, go ahead.
Go
Please,
ahead.
let me hear from you. This is a gentleman that came to my home. He probably doesn't remember, but I invited him. We had a big estate home in Mount Vernon, and my parents opened up the door to all my classmates at various times. And David was one of my classmates that had a Sabbath with me. My brother Gabe was at Princeton at the time. We were at Columbia. We sat around a table, and if you remember anything, I'd be very shocked. But go ahead. What is your thought?
Well, the thought is that someone just mentioned, what is David trying to say? And somewhere in the Torah, I think it was Leviticus, that God said, I am holy and I want you to be holy.
Be a nation of priests of the holy.
Don't just be. And maybe this is all about elevating man to be holy and do holy things the way he's doing it, the way God's doing it. And observing the Sabbath is a covenant for all times. So that's just a thought of, at first I thought that this was transactional, that if you love me, if you praise me, then I'll do something for you. But I think it's deeper than that. And
And we'll come to that later. Whether the praise is out of fear of God, the fear of punishment, or that you're an altruistic appreciator of everything that your life has given you. And
right.
And we'll come to that later. It's part of the poem.
And the attention that we pay to his creation, which is, I think, what you're trying to get to.
And to get back to the idea that God created the world for two reasons, basically. Number one, he had man in mind, okay? And not only that, but he had man in mind to complete the work that God could not complete in 6 days. So the seventh day is a day of contemplation. It's a day when we can discuss all this matter, the spiritual matter, and figure out how we become partners with the higher source. How can we sit in God's company, a round table of God and other spiritual figures, and figure out how we can improve life down here? Because that's where we're at. We're not up there yet. That comes. But the question is, are you praising God because you fear punishment? And there are so many punishments that the Torah does. Or are you doing it because you just really are in a different space and you really appreciate all the blessings that you have? I mean, that's beautiful. I'm glad you came in, and you're going to do the next. We're up to what verse number? Are you with me here? I sent you the link, and if you can't see it, I think you were on verse. Are we on number 7? We're on to number 6. Yeah, number 6. I have it on the screen here. I'm not sure you're able to see it, but I do have it, and I sent you a link to it. Do you have the link, or are you able to?
Trying to get, so where is it? Lord is great.
That men shall talk of the might of your awesome deeds. Number 6.
I don't seem to, yes.
Yeah.
Men shall talk of the might of your awesome deeds, and I will recount your greatness.
Okay.
Just one other thing, because we talked about generational things, and I don't know, this recently came to me in relating to younger people. And you always bring up other sources, Richard. So I think, and you know this better than I, Aristotle, I think, said, why are older people more conservative? And, we make so many mistakes, or I made mistakes as a younger person. And so, at this point, I say, don't do that, don't do this, don't do this. A wise man learns from other people's mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
A smart man learns from his own mistakes. So I think that, getting to that level, and maybe the guidance from God that he's showing us, is important. Of course, you mentioned David as a scion of God, and the Christians take it further. But it is interesting that Jesus came from he's a scion of David.
Yeah. Came from
So
the
that's where they took it from. But anyway, I'm sorry to digress.
No, I mean that's what we're here for. I mean, we are the Judeo-Christian tradition. Our Judeo-Christian. The Christians took so much from us, sadly, and they took so much of our wealth, where they have in the Vatican, tremendous wealth from the temple. They've got tremendous wealth.
So men shall talk of the might of your awesome deeds, and I will recount your great.
Okay, yeah, let's finish on this one, because we're only about a third of the way through here. We'll never get through
So
it.
I guess he's trying to get,
Go ahead, yeah.
to get people to a higher level. David is.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, David was a sinner, a tremendous sinner, and yet through all that, God picked him out and said, he knew he was going to sin. Nathan knew that he was going to sin. As a matter of fact, David was not the one to build the temple. He was punished in his lifetime because he could not build the temple because he slept with Bathsheba, and the husband sent the husband off to be killed in war. He suffered a lot, and the understanding it comes through suffering. That's what the Psalm 92. There's a major part of it that evil will perish. That we're surrounded by evil. We have done evil. There's nobody here that has not done some type of act that you've regretted, and at some point you've hopefully have resolved it so that you can have what I call the clean slate. I mean, I've had my slate reddened with all kinds of actions I regretted I did, but somehow, you got to get that the slate cleaned so that you can really internalize this stuff. That's the only way you can do it. And you have to, and we're going to come to it. We're going to come to why the matrons of our matriarchs of our religion had to suffer so much into their 90s and before they had children. Why did God make them suffer so much before they can actually have offspring so that we would have a nation of Israel? I mean, think of Sarah. Abraham 99, Sarah 90, and they couldn't have children. So, what is it all about? But God's power. Let me just finish with this idea, because I do have some material to share with you guys about Ve'ezuz Neratecha Yomeru. So this is verse 6. Okay, Noratecha. That the word Noratecha means wonders. Okay, now Traditional translation refers to God's revenge against our enemies, the wicked. Okay. The psalmist David, is among the few that is not motivated by revenge, but by his love for his devoted servants endangered by the wicked. Again, this from Malbim. So, yes, God's wonders, the Egyptians, he drowned all the Egyptians. But our emphasis should be on not using these wonders to get back at them. I mean, we have a rite called the redemption of the firstborn. This is done on the Passover. We do, God has redeemed the firstborn, but we always remember that God did exact revenge on the firstborn. Every firstborn animal and person in Egypt lost their life. And we shouldn't dwell on that. We should dwell on the fact that God redeemed us. And because he redeemed us, we have to look at the positive side. How can we then pay God back and praise him? I mean, the morning prayer has got this song of the sea every morning. You just get Oz your share. You keep saying that God took us out. It's a long prayer and it's there. So, the awareness of being thankful should be a part of the strength of God. That's the strength that we should take from God and tell other people. It's the yomeru, that we should tell God's awesome deeds to others. Let them speak to other people.
That's why anybody who knows he or she has done wrong could learn how to apologize and go through the 3 steps of apologizing and having a clear conscience or somewhat of a clear conscience after that.
Perfect. And that's what we discussed last week. The word Shabbat is left out of the psalm of the Sabbath. And if you take the last letter of Shabbat, that tough off, you have shav, shuv, teshuva. You have this. You have to come back before you can really enjoy Sabbath. You got to have that white tabula rasa, as I call it. You got to clean it, and somehow that's what David is telling us here. That you've got to deal with the self and find out what you need to do to get to his level. Because this guy sinned so much. He sinned. God told him, and we say the tachanun is part of the prayer because David did not follow God's instruction about the sheep. If you look at it, and God said, "Look, I wanted you to keep the sheep so you can count." It had to do with counting, and God said, "You use the sheep to count." And David, did not pay attention. That was a great sin. David suffered. David was suffered. Well, how did he suffer? He was constantly being chased by his Saul, being chased by Absalom. He didn't have it, and he even went to the Philistines, as we studied, in order to gain that. He came crazy to them. He was a nutbag. They said, we don't want to kill him. He'll kill himself. So, so we have to deal with self. And we have to realize that God is got the strength. We're just appendages. We're just servants. And if we think that because we have all this rechush and we have all this wealth and all that, that's just, God has given it to for a reason. Okay, we'll discuss that later on too. But I think we've come making our way upward here to verse 21, and I'm just saying, in the interest of people wanting to have a Sunday, that we pause right now and that we continue in 2 weeks with verse number 7. I guess we're up to number 7. Okay. Any other comments before we dismiss?
Sunday, Shavuot.
It is. Yeah. Is that a problem for anybody? Yeah. It's a Sunday before Shavuot. Shavuot starts that night, Sunday night. Yeah. So that's why I'm free. Yeah.
And maybe on the way home.
Yeah. Well, if you can make it. Otherwise, these are recorded. I thank Dave for being participating. I hope you'll join us in 2 weeks, Dave. And feel free to
Try
contact.
my best.
Give me a
Thank you so
feedback.
much.
Yeah, give me a feedback on, and
Thank-
how, what I call the space, we're both spacemen here, creating a time to discuss these matters,
I want to, Richard, I want to thank you and all the other members of the roundtable. I
Thank you.
learned a great deal from.
And I look forward to us getting together at Restaurant 613. And I'll
Okay.
elevate your day with some sports bar activity, a beautiful sports bar. And
Very.
Yeah,
take
we
care. Have
absolutely.
a great day. Yeah, bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rich.